Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. So we have James Birchall from Sophos here and also Helen Murphy from Bytes.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Helen Murphy and I work in our vendor solutions team and form part of your wider account management team here at Bytes. So Bytes are currently providing the full portfolio of Sophos solutions from endpoint and mobile to network security, and being a platinum partner, which is the highest level of partner status afforded to Sophos partners, we have great relationships with the Sophos team across the board. As well as licenses, we can also provide you with professional services through our trusted partner ecosystem and using one of Sophos's preferred service-only partners. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us following the webinar today and we can provide some more information. So I'll now pass over to James to continue with the webinar.
So as we all know, Microsoft BitLocker, it provides one function and it does it really, really well, which is encrypting hard drives. And although BitLocker is really easy to deploy, it's fast and reliable, its features are quite narrowly targeted homogeneous Windows environments. And full disk encryption is not enough to meet all of the data protection challenges your organization may actually face. And over the last decade or so, there's been a massive shift in how people tend to work, and also how they access corporate data and corporate resources. So sensitive corporate and customer data is moving outside the relative safety of the traditional corporate security perimeter, which is computers on site and within the corporate firewall. Users today want to access their information in an increasing number of different ways. For example, accessing files on personal computers at home, on their own tablets and mobiles, or even sharing data through public cloud storage providers. Basically, sensitive data can really be found everywhere today. So having data move to so many of these different kinds of places and different devices outside the direct control of the organization, of course, creates its own unique challenges. And it's becoming increasingly hard and time-consuming to maintain adequate and solid corporate security policies. It's also difficult to make sure that all intellectual property or IP stays safe. And IP is many times the key asset of a company, and usually it's critical that that is 100% protected. If a laptop, smartphone, or USB hard disk is lost or stolen, it can be really difficult to limit or even assess damages. And the same thing with decommissioning or when an employee leaves the company. Controlling that he or she can no longer access any corporate data isn't really easy. And finally, the challenges of staying compliant. And compliance means really to follow legal obligations and government directives that specify how certain data should be protected. And this is becoming proportionally harder the more places users take the sensitive or confidential data. So all of these things, and a lot more of course, must be addressed in one way or another, while at the same time trying to ensure that users remain productive and can continue to work the way they really want to. So let's take a closer look at compliance, which, as I mentioned, is a really important concern for any business that stores sensitive data of any kind. Now, compliance means to adhere to the rule set laid down to govern how data must be stored and protected. Now, some are global, things like PCI DSS, and in addition to other global regulations, each individual country, region, or industry usually has their own set of guidelines that must be followed. For example, like the UK Data Protection Act. Now, if regulated data isn't protected and it was lost or breached, the results could potentially be devastating. And for example, things like fines, loss of customer confidence and goodwill, the need to disclose the breach, though, contacting all of your customers actually affected, and also unwanted publicity that goes hand in hand with all of that. And in the worst case, the total loss of business or prosecution. They're really just, to mention just a few repercussions. So to put this into perspective, I wanted to share a few interesting stats that are relevant to data protection. So it's interesting to note that a large majority of companies, about 86%, has had a laptop lost or stolen at some point. And the cost of the hardware when losing a laptop, of course, is not really significant. It's the data it contains that holds the real value. The average value of every lost record is about £100 per record, which adds up to about £30,000 per lost laptop as a global average. Another fact that certainly made me raise my eyebrows when I first came across it is that over 8,000 laptops are being left behind in airports every single week, and these are never reclaimed, which is an absolutely astonishing number. And the research behind this was done quite a few years ago, somewhere in about 2008. And although that with the way people still travel and use laptops, it's quite reasonable to assume that that number is certainly similar today, if not even higher. Also, over 80% of medium-sized companies with somewhere in the region of 100 to 1,000 users don't even encrypt their laptops, leaving over 4/5 really vulnerable to the risks associated with data breaches or lost hardware. And as I'm sure most of you are really well aware already, that the best solution to solving all of these challenges is, of course, to encrypt devices and data. However, encryption can be sometimes prohibitive and limit user productivity, slow boot-up times and annoy end users. Sometimes it really doesn't just seem to work on the latest hardware. People think it can incapacitate machines if it fails, limit collaboration and distribution options, and also hinder current IT processes. Now, all of these observations, and some of them are sometimes incorrect perceptions, will mean that in most cases IT teams, who may be very lean and small, medium-sized organizations, have to spend a lot of time when evaluating or rolling out encryption across an organization. So to help alleviate some of the pain and reduce the work involved in adequately protecting an organization, our design goal with the Sophos data protection product line leading up to this release has been encryption without compromise, meaning that what we want to ensure that our encryption products help these already overstretched IT teams to easily roll out and manage encryption, and at the same time not getting in the way of end users. The idea is to let users work the way they want, instead of enforcing rigorous controls, which could potentially limit user productivity. And we believe in encrypting data wherever it lives instead. Windows, Mac, removable media, network, cloud, mobile, for example. Also, a key concept is to keep encryption management and deployment as simple as possible to, again, minimize IT resource requirements. So that really brings me to the main cornerstone in our new data protection strategy, which is to deliver the best of both worlds, security plus performance. So first, let's cover performance. Recent versions of both Windows and Mac already have disk encryption technology built in. BitLocker on Windows and FileVault 2 on Mac. And to make sure that encryption is as fast, reliable, and as seamless as possible, we now leverage this built-in or native encryption technology whenever it is available, which dramatically improves performance compared to any proprietary third-party encryption technology. And since the built-in encryption processing sits at a lower layer and integrates tighter in the OS, it can boot and run faster, making encryption virtually invisible to the user. Now, Safeguard Enterprise comes with excellent functions that manage clients encrypted with both BitLocker and FileVault 2 in the same management center console, meaning that there is no need to maintain separate management processes on Windows and Mac for deployment. Things like key recovery and reporting, for example. Now, having the ability to efficiently and centrally manage devices, keys, policies, and recovery across all devices in the organization is absolutely critical in order to keep encryption simple. So the second part of our strategy is multi-platform management, ensuring that all devices can be managed from the same console management center regardless of the platform. When Windows and Mac are supported from the release and looking into the future, also mobile devices are going to follow suit. And finally, the third part of our new strategy is to secure data everywhere. And as I already mentioned at the very beginning, with the change in how people work these days, knowing that data is safe no matter where it's accessed or shared means peace of mind and ultimately security. So whether it's on removable media, networked files, mobile, or even in the cloud. So what this provides is seamless encryption that supports the way your people work rather than restricting them. If you limit your encryption to full disk, that will inevitably open a door for data loss when your users take it with them. particularly if you're required to conform to industry, national, or state data protection regulations. Full disk encryption may provide the baseline compliance for your PCs, but it doesn't guarantee that your company won't make the headlines for the wrong reasons. Safeguard Enterprise enables you to secure your data wherever it's stored while supporting diverse platforms and encryption products. You can use it as a single platform for all your data protection needs, or to integrate with third-party encryption solutions. Safeguard Enterprise supports all from Windows XP, if you have any left, through Windows 8, so no devices are left unencrypted or unprotected. Safeguard Enterprise is the only product on the market offering encryption for your hard drives, removable media, network file shares, and files stored in the cloud. Plus, all these functions are managed through a single console, giving you one place for data recovery, policy, and key management. In addition, Safeguard Enterprise native device encryption provides a way to integrate your BitLocker encrypted devices within your Safeguard Enterprise solution, so you can manage devices encrypted by BitLocker alongside all other encryption within the same management center. This integration removes the limitations of BitLocker, supporting a broader set of production environments while providing multi-platform support with uniform key management and data recovery. So a good first layer of defense is to ensure your machine's data is protected with full disk encryption. Safeguard Enterprise provides full disk encryption for laptops, desktops, and virtual desktops. It increases performance by leveraging optimization on Intel i5 and i7 computers with Advanced Encryption Standard New Instructions, or AES-NI. It also lets you run and manage native encryption for Microsoft BitLocker and Firewall 2, Opal 102, Windows 7, Vista, XP, and virtual desktops, all from one central management console. And as we've already discussed, Safeguard can leverage the power of native device encryption built into the OS for superior performance gains without sacrificing security. The central management console allows you to manage the built-in encryption in the OS. So again, you have Microsoft BitLocker and Mac Firewall 2. The Safeguard Enterprise embraces native encryption functions and provides that essential encryption policy deployment, recovery, and compliance reporting. And by leveraging OS-embedded technology, it provides the best encryption performance, reliability, and robustness. So the benefits of full disk encryption are pretty clear. It provides an effective and true barrier against data breaches, but without authentication, encryption is pretty much useless. Pre-boot authentication or power-on authentication serves as an extension of the BIOS or boot firmware and guarantees a secure, tamper-proof environment external to the operating system as a trusted authentication layer. The PBA prevents anything being read from the hard disk, such as the operating system, until the user has confirmed he or she has the correct password or other credentials. So with PBA, the computer will wait to boot up until you supply the correct username and password. The lights are on and nobody's home. Why is that so important? Well, pre-boot authentication is important because it disables workarounds to computer security. So for example, it's quite common knowledge for data security professionals and enthusiasts that password protection doesn't actually protect data. And the reason for that? Well, it's because password protection can be easily bypassed without guessing the correct password. Windows emergency disks can be used to bypass the Windows logon prompts. A little complicated, but instructions are provided and easily found online. Linux Live CDs can bypass the logon prompt as well, and the computer will boot from the CD, and frequently enough for those who are new to using Linux, you'll see a Linux environment on your computer instead of Windows. And getting to the data is then really just a matter of clicking. Not too much of a complicated process, but it does require you to be familiar with Linux. And password protection can also be bypassed by hooking up a hard drive. So let's call it the target hard drive to another computer. And because the other computer boots from its own hard drive, the target hard drive doesn't prompt for a password when it's accessed. And that's known as slaving a disk. So how is PBA, or pre-boot authentication, important when it comes to hard drive encryption? Technically, if a hard drive is encrypted and does not have PBA, one can access the drive. Live CDs, for example, would provide the required OS to power the computer. However, because the contents are encrypted, in all likelihood, the hard drive would show up as unformatted or simply deny access to that data. If, however, the POA or PBA is active, it plays a pivotal part in keeping your data safe. from the moment anyone boots up your PC. It enables pre-boot user authentication using a password, cryptographic token, or smart card, and uses a secure logon process to block password attacks. So as we've seen and talked about, data doesn't just sit on laptops and desktops anymore. All of your end users are accessing and sharing it. And using access control lists and Active Directory rights to restrict access to your data is a step in the right direction, but it doesn't address internal compliance. Now, how do you keep the IT staff that are authorized to support servers and infrastructure from accessing sensitive files? How can you separate the ability to manage folders and backup files from the ability to read a medical record or a payroll file? And what if those sensitive file shares aren't even in the environment at all? If you're leveraging infrastructure as a service vendors such as Amazon Web Services, or if you're using outsourced help desk staff, you also need to make sure your vendor staff can't access your regulated or sensitive data. So what Sophos provides is encryption security with safeguard encryption for file shares, which lets you encrypt the data at rest, so backup and management of file shares can be independent from access to the files themselves. This keeps sensitive files in the hands of authorized users and keeps the auditors out of the IT department's daily operations. Safeguard also encrypts removable media, including USB drives and optical media, across all Windows platforms, expanding platform support and portable encrypted file access beyond what's possible with BitLocker to go. And finally, protecting data even when it's stored in the cloud. Data stays encrypted when uploading or downloading from cloud storage services like Dropbox and Ignite. The keys stay local to the client, and data is accessible only when using the keys. Encrypted files in the cloud are even accessible through the Sophos mobile encryption app on iOS and Android devices. So hopefully now you've got a taste of the new Sophos data protection strategy and of Safeguard Encryption 6.1. Data is moving everywhere, and it needs encrypting along the way. Safeguard Enterprise can really help you with that. Data protection is a major part of Sophos security strategy going forward, and we're 100% committed to encryption, managed both on-premise and or in the cloud. Now, Sophos is today the only vendor to offer encryption for BitLocker and FileVault 2, disk encryption, cloud, removable media, and file shares all in one centrally managed solution for both Windows and Mac, delivering encryption without compromise, plus security and performance. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for your time and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions from the presentation, we've got some time now to answer them. And so I'm going to hand back over to Amy and Helen to collate those questions and give you instructions on how to ask them.
Brilliant, thanks James. So please, if anyone has any questions, if you just put them in the question box and we'll read them out to James to answer. I've got one question here, James. So you mentioned that Safeguard can cover Macs as well as Windows devices. Does this also cover other areas such as removable storage?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we covered that, I suppose, for Windows machines. But yeah, the Safeguard console not only manages Windows and Macs, but also removable storage for both platforms. Even things like file share and removable media encryption and even cloud storage encryption can be achieved on a Mac as well as a Windows platform. If you did have a mixed environment or even maybe just a couple of Macs, most people seem to have creative types in their organization, whether it's marketing or maybe a high-level exec who insists on using something flashy like a Mac. It means that you can still share those encryption keys all through that one console. You can manage them, and that data or encrypted data can be shared with everyone in your organization, no matter what platform they're actually using. So a really good question. I hope that answered it.
That's great, thanks James. And I've got another question here. So for pre-boot authentication through BitLocker, you need TPM on the motherboard. Do you need a TPM device for Sophos to encrypt with pre-boot authentication?
Yes, another good question. So there's a few ways we can interact with TPM chips and BitLocker. So if you're using just BitLocker, yes, you're correct. You obviously need that TPM chip. However, we can emulate that TPM chip with a USB stick. So if you have older hardware which doesn't have that chip, then you can still use BitLocker but with a USB, or you could even actually have TPM chip and USB if you wanted to, or of course just use the TPM chip on its own. So there are a multitude of different ways that Safeguard can configure PBA and interactions with the TPM chip.
Lovely, thank you. Thanks, perfect. And another question, where can we see the application in action? Is there a video demo that's available?
Oh, I think I lost the end of your question there, Amy. But yeah, we have lots of information on sophos.com. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you search for Safeguard 6.1 on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find that information. We also have weekly webinars. So I can only suggest maybe getting in touch with your Bytes account manager to find out when the next webinar is. Of course, we can always put on demos if there's a specific requirement and demonstrate the product in action. But first off, I would definitely recommend checking out sophos.com and then also our YouTube channels as well. Lots of cool videos on there. Are you back with us, Amy?
Brilliant, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. So another question, we currently use Safeguard Easy 5.5 for Mac Windows. Can keys be transferred?
So I'm assuming transferred it into an upgrade maybe to Safeguard Enterprise. It'd be good to just know a bit more information on that question. But yes, you can migrate from specific versions of Safeguard. If you're on 5.5, the upgrade path, I'd have to check to see if you have to go to 5.6 before version 6. But all of that information in your Safeguard database, if you're using Safeguard Easy, effectively you can migrate to Safeguard Enterprise, and it will obviously keep all of the encryption keys and data you may have stored in your database. So short answer is yes, you can migrate, and yes, it will keep all of the information in the database. It's just depending what versions you're using. And again, just get in touch with Sophos support if you're an existing Sophos customer, and they'll be able to guide you through that upgrade or migration process.
Lovely, thank you. And another question, so presumably the Sophos removable media encryption component is proprietary and does not employ any native RME capability such as BitLocker to go?
Yes, that's correct, yes. We use our own proprietary technology. Something else that we also employ with our removable media is a Safeguard Portable, which is effectively just an executable that you can decide by policy to employ that onto the device. If it copies that executable onto the device, you can then take that encrypted data on that USB stick to a machine that maybe hasn't got Safeguard installed, so maybe your home machine. The Safeguard Portable will then prompt you for a media passphrase to decrypt that data. So it even means then you can carry on working on that encrypted data at home. Obviously, you know the passphrase, and you can set that on the device. So yeah, our own proprietary technology, and we also give you that portable element to it as well.
Lovely, thank you, James. And does your management platform provide a TPM management tool?
No, not that I'm aware of. So we literally, when we're encrypting BitLocker, the process is called by the policy when a policy arrives on the machine, and it notices that BitLocker is available, and it will use the BitLocker encryption engine. As far as I'm aware, we don't have any other interaction with the TPM chip other than to specify that it's used, or that we use a USB stick instead of the TPM. Yeah, that's a very, very good question. If I haven't answered that clearly enough, then please feel free to send an email again onto your Bytes rep, or I don't know if Amy, you have my details on top, and I'll be happy to pick that up afterwards. Not sure if I've answered that question or not.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we'll get in touch after the webinar just to make sure.
Okay, thanks.
And another question, can the Sophos tool manage password resets for PBA and or BitLocker, or is that a return to base option?
So password reset, so the way, let's say we're talking about domain credentials, the way that would work is through Control-Alt-Delete, and that would be our supported mechanism for changing passwords. Once that password is changed locally on the machine, that information is then passed to the Safeguard client, which synchronizes locally and also then back with the Safeguard console. So all of the local password changes are still done in the usual method of Control-Alt-Delete, every 30 or 60 days, however you have that defined for changing passwords. Other than that, we don't have any password control. If, for example, you have a situation where somebody has forgotten their password to the Power On Authentication, or PBA, one of the things we add into BitLocker is a challenge response mechanism. This effectively brings up a challenge code on the endpoint, which the end user then has to read back or send back to the admin, who will then put that into the console, verify that user is supposed to be a user on that machine, provide a response code, which will then allow them to see their password, or to allow them straight through to the desktop, where they would then have to authenticate again. On other methods as well, we have local self-help. So if they have forgotten their password, you have a list of predefined questions which the user has answered. They can then, it's almost like it is self-help on the endpoint at POA. They can then pick, say, 5 of the questions and answer them. If they get those correct, again, they'll be allowed through POA. A number of different recovery options available. The final thing, actually, I should mention specifically about BitLocker is when you encrypt with BitLocker, if you need to recover through the PBA, obviously BitLocker has a recovery key. One of the nice things about Safeguard encryption is that when you deploy the agent, it actually automatically extracts that recovery key and stores it back in the Safeguard console. So if you don't want to use challenge response or local self-help, you can still use the recovery key, and it's all stored locally. You don't need to rely on somebody going around and extracting all those keys and storing them somewhere safe. Safeguard takes care of that all for you automatically.
Wonderful, thank you. And now further to the removable storage encryption question, can you please confirm or not that after encryption the devices can be used in both Mac and PC and are interchangeable, so we wouldn't have to have separate devices for Mac and PC users?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So if obviously that drive has been formatted and you have, I don't know, Fuse on your Mac, so you can view NTFS. Then the encryption keys that will be required to read that data can be shared between all of the machines, whether they're Mac or Windows. You can, as the administrator from the console, you'll obviously see all of your encrypted machines, whether they are Mac or Windows, and you can interchange group keys, personal keys, any kind of key to different users' key rings. So yes, is the short answer, I suppose.
Perfect, thank you. And another question, do you provide RME policy controls such as enforcing data import extract from and to encrypted media, or allowing export to encrypted media but permit import in clear?
So the way that the policies work for removable media, and it's the same with cloud storage and file share, is that the location is defined in the policy, and any time any piece of data is copied into that location, it is transparently and automatically encrypted with the defined key. There is nothing for the end user to configure. Literally, when they copy that data in, it just happens straight away. Again, that's all centrally managed by policies, and those policies can be applied to specific devices, specific users, you can import your Active Directory, so you can put those policies anywhere you like within your organization.
Great, thank you. I think that's all of our questions. If anyone has any other questions, please pop them in the box and we'll read them out to James.
Yep, great. Yeah, you can certainly hang around for more questions.
So I have another one here, James. So what else are Sophos developing to help with managing encrypted data?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, lots of good questions today. Obviously, integrating our encryption solutions with mobile platforms, I think I briefly touched on that, is something that we are developing. We already have content management for iOS. So an example in this scenario, an end user receives an email on their device. And then through our mobile control, or MDM tool, which is called Sophos Mobile Control, you can restrict that user to only opening that email or any attachments in a particular app. In this scenario, I'm going to pick Sophos Mobile Encryption app, which is on the iOS device. As soon as you attempt to open that file or email in that app, it asks you to create an encryption key. And will then store it in that secure location, so Dropbox, Ignite, Box, any kind of web data solution. And then once it's then stored in that container, it's obviously protected, encrypted with the key, and that key can then be synchronized back with Safeguard. So you can access that data wherever. We're looking at expanding that technology obviously to all mobile platforms, so I believe Android is next, Windows Phone as well. And we're just looking at all of the other areas about how people and users can share data and how we can keep that data protected. We're also adding in, we don't currently have local self-help for Mac or FileVault 2, so looking at doing further improvements to the recovery options that are available with both BitLocker and FileVault 2, and making sure that we add even more features, such as maybe even a QR code for recovery for BitLocker and FileVault 2. Yeah, lots of things on the roadmap.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think that concludes all the questions now. So thanks ever so much, James. I hope everyone found that really useful.